So I am going to read a short essay called Memory Taking Flight. In one of my favorite memories, I'm peeking through my fingers, shivering, as New York Harbor, the heliport, the bustling streets of New York City, and even the skyscrapers plummet away from my feet. I am dreadfully afraid within this glass-bottom helicopter as we rise into a blue sky soaring above the glittering waters of Upper New York Bay. My larger-than-life grandfather, Maurice Roach, is next to me, smiling in his glasses and gray suit, and for the duration of that ride, without his usual cigar in hand. Instead, he wraps his big hand around my 7-year-old hand and gives it a comforting squeeze. I'm sure it's a safe assumption to write I was wearing a flowered dress with white anklets and black patent leather shoes, my bangs askew on my forehead, my freckles too pronounced on my nose and my cheeks. But my memory hasn't actually held on to what I look like on that momentous day. I base these details on photographs and what I know to be true back then. For 1 week each summer, the 3 older girls in my family, Patricia, Maureen, and me, and our cousin Katie, were invited to stay with my mother's parents, Maurice and Florence Roach, in Jackson Heights, New York. Neither of my grandparents had ever needed to learn to drive in New York, and so they didn't. Instead, they took us on many adventures, introducing us to New York's finest transportation of those years: trains, subways, the Circle Line cruise around Manhattan, and my favorite, those bright yellow checkered cabs with the jump seat in them for children, which of course were dreadfully dangerous, which probably made them even better, right? Grandma and Grandpa took us to restaurants where the piano player crooned songs from the 30s and 40s. Sometimes back in their brownstone after dinner, my grandpa would teach us to play poker, giving us each a roll of quarters. My grandmother was less pleased at this turn of events. We would dress up for the week. No casual clothes were allowed in their house during those blissful summer visits. So none of us ever packed jeans or shorts or t-shirts or flip-flops into our suitcases. As Grandma explained to me once, dressing up marks our time as special and sets it apart from other ordinary days. Perhaps this way of marking the day as extraordinary make them stay so vivid in my memory, at least in some respects. The day of the helicopter ride was one of the most enchanting of my life, and when my grandpa and I hovered over our destination, the gleaming green Statue of Liberty holding her torch high, and when he told me, look down, I gasped when I saw Lady Liberty's crown packed with people waving up at us. First, I stared down timidly, and then I waved with joyful abandon. What I recall was not the pilot's face, nor the whir of helicopter blades, nor the clothes I wore that day. Instead, memory captured the overwhelming love I felt for my grandfather, how powerful he was. By the way, he also taught me to love poetry. And how comforting his girth close to me, his scent of cigar smoke and wool in my nose. And one other emotion stayed deeply with me that day: awe. Life was full of possibility. Memory is a persnickety, unpredictable editor. My mind prioritized for posterity the sea of emotions that carried the hour in the company of my beloved grandfather and let go much of the brick and mortar details of that day. As I grew older, I began to realize that while my memory was an expert at, say, imprinting song lyrics, or moments of emotional connection with loved ones, or lines from poems, or information on animals I loved at the time, dogs and horses were chief among them, it was too quick to jettison the nuggets of, say, what we ate that day, or what had made me laugh so hard, or who attended a family party, or when did I have the mumps. I was alarmed at how much I didn't retain. In the 4th grade, the year I began to really relish writing, after my teacher, whose name, of course, I've forgotten, told me to add more details to my writing to build a stronger essay, I asked my mom for a diary with a key for my birthday. Thus began my decades-long sustained effort of writing in diaries and journals so I could hold on to the minutiae of my everyday life. The new yellow shirt my mother surprised me with. Yes, interesting things I held on to. Or, Terry, this is for you, the fact that Terry, my year younger brother, requested strawberry shortcake for his birthday dinner dessert that July night. My adult self laughs kindly at my 7th grade self who, although being bullied by 2 boys that year, never once recorded that in my notebook, but instead I wrote page upon looping page about a suede jacket with swaying fringe sleeves worn by my then boy crush, the handsome, swaggering Jimmy Davis. Journals became an essential add-on to the limits of my memory, a kind of exterior net catching the slippery fish of details that easily leapt from mind. And for a time, I became equally obsessed with capturing ordinary day-to-day details with my mother's new tape recorder, a silver metal rectangle with buttons to push for playing, rewinding, and recording. I still have that tape, which my 8-year-old self made, recording all the sounds of a winter day. On it, I captured boot crunch, the slow skid of a car's tire trying to stop at the end of Overbrook Drive, my own huffing breath as I ran in the snow, a cardinal string of down-slurred whistles ending in a trill, and the more distant sound of the neighborhood boys in LaBelle's corner yard, jeering and laughing as they had a snowball fight. When I listen to it now, I'm moved by this collection of sounds in the snow of that morning. It captures the ineffable threads of how our lives are woven, and it reminds me how much we cannot retain. Listening to the sounds on that tape recorder, my body remembers how bitterly cold my hands were that day because I couldn't work the tape recorder with mittens on. The wind bit into my hands as I walked up and down Overbrook Drive, seeking sound. Afterwards, my mother mildly scolded me for taking her tape recorder without permission. And then she handed me a mug of hot cocoa that she had just made in a pan on the stove. Nobody does that anymore, do they? Pan on the stove. Oh, the layered deliciousness of the chocolate scent, the heat thawing my hands and my mother's good company. Had I not recorded those simple everyday sounds, that ordinary snow day would be lost forever. Through jotting down the day-to-day details of life, I grew to love the forgettable minutiae that builds our hours and years. Weren't those details what truly build a life? I think of T.S. Eliot's Prufrock, measuring out his life in coffee spoons. Though my father died back in 2002, I can still see his thick, unruly eyebrows arching quizzically. A journal entry helped me remember 15-year-old George surprising 15-year-old me with a kiss as we sat on the seaside beach boardwalk watching the tides move as Yes's song Roundabout blared from the tilt-a-whirl. Entries also detailed harder moments. In the surgeon's office, the surreal carnival colors of yellow tang and orange clownfish swimming in an enormous fish tank as I waited anxiously to be called in for surgery to remove a melanoma. Journals became my archive of the overlooked and easily forgotten. Yes, my memory was more colander than mahogany box, but I didn't want to lose all those beautiful, fragile threads while retaining only the broader strokes of my life. As a writer, I was greedy. I wanted all of it, even the small moment after the amazement of a helicopter ride with my grandpa that wonderful afternoon long ago. I wanted to hold on to the hard rectangle of chocolate Turkish taffy, still in its wrapper, smooth in my hand, to crack it against the sidewalk outside of my grandfather's favorite cigar shop where we had walked after dinner. the rumbling trains overhead, my grandfather unwrapping his cigar, sniffing it, sliding the gold ring off of it, and putting it on my thumb. I wanted again to slide one wedge of taffy in my mouth and stuff the rest of it in my sweater pocket, and to put my hand in my grandpa's hand for the long walk home. We had had the most wonderful day. We walked toward 88th Street, my mouth full of sweetness.